Hello, let's talk about the question watermelon. Let's read the question first. One hot summer day, Pete Billy decide to buy a watermelon. They choose the biggest, ripest one in their opinion. After the watermelon is weighed, the scale shows that it's kilograms. They rush home, dying of thirst, and decide to divide the berry. Apparently, watermelon is a berry. Alright. However, they face a hard problem. Pete and Billy are great fans of even numbers. That's why they want to divide the watermelon in such a way that each of the two parts weighs an even number of kilo. At the same time, it's not obligatory that the parts are equal. Yada yada yada. So the question essentially says we're given a number and we need to figure out if that number can be divided into two even numbers. Um, the only way we can find an even number with two numbers, or the sum of two even numbers, let me rephrase. The idea is that the sum of two even numbers will never be a odd number, and vice versa. So if you have an even number, and both of your separations or the parts that Pete and Billy are taking are even, then the number cannot be odd. So in the note they give us an example. The boys can divide the watermelon into two parts. This is the input example that they've given, 8, which can be divided into 2 and 9 kilos respectively. Rather than 8 here, if for example the number was 5, there is no way to get 5 by adding two even numbers, since 5 is an odd number. And that's what we're trying to implement in the code as well. So if we can divide the number into two even parts, we return a yes. If not, we return a no. I'll be doing the code in C++. So we're gonna include IOStream. We're gonna use namespace standard and main. Now this part iOS sync with stdio. Not 100% sure what exactly they do, but I learned somewhere that they reduce the time for input and output in C++. Regardless, our first and only input line contains the number integer w. So we're just gonna do int w, and then we're gonna input the w string. Now we have the if statement here. As I've mentioned before, we cannot have an odd number and then the sum of those, pardon me, if the number w is odd, there's no way that it can be a sum of two even numbers. So that's what we're trying to do here. So if w mod 2 is not equal to 0, or, and here the or statements is I would say fairly understandable. If the weight is less than or equal to 2, we can also do it less than or equal to 3. That's all right. The idea is that if the weight is 2, we can divide it into two 1 and 1 pieces, but since 1 is odd, that result would be incorrect. So we're just excluding the situation where even though w is an even number, in the case of 2, the result won't be correct. So if w is not equal, or w mod 2 is not equal to 0, which essentially means that w is an odd number, or w is an is a number less than or equal to 2, we return no or output no. If it is, if it does not uh, come under these two restrictions or parts, we return a yes, since we can separate the watermelon into two parts which are both even. Let's try to run this. Submit, submit, and it's accepted in 92 milliseconds. Memory 0 kilobytes. That was the solution to the question watermelon. I'll be working on the next couple of questions in the upcoming videos. Thank you.